Put the watch back before I call security. The accusation exploded across the luxury Rolex showroom so loudly that conversations stopped instantly. A young black man standing near the glass display slowly froze while dozens of rich customers turned to stare at him. Expensive watches sparkled beneath bright white lights inside the Beverly Hills boutique, but suddenly the atmosphere felt cold and dangerous. The employee behind the counter crossed his arms tightly as it put it back. The young man blinked in confusion. I was just looking at it. Looking, the employee snapped. You've been touching merchandise for 10 minutes without buying anything. Several customers nearby smirked quietly. One older white man whispered loud enough for others to hear. Here we go again. The young black man slowly placed the Rolex back onto the velvet stand with careful hands. Humiliation burned through his chest immediately, not because this was new, because it wasn't. His name was Adrian Cole, and moments like this followed him almost everywhere. Expensive, luxury stores, high-end hotels, private events. People always stared too long before asking suspicious questions. Like black success still looked unnatural to certain Americans. Adrian kept his voice calm. I didn't do anything wrong. The employee laughed coldly. Then you won't mind us checking your pockets before you leave. That sentence hit the showroom like a slap. Several customers immediately pulled out phones. Because public humiliation had become entertainment now. Adrian slowly looked around the boutique. Security guards already moving closer. Rich shoppers whispering. Employees watching him carefully like they expected him to run. And deep inside, something painful settled into his stomach. Not fear, exhaustion. The exhaustion of constantly proving he belonged in places other people entered freely. A tall white security guard stepped beside Adrian. Sir, we need you to cooperate. Adrian nodded slowly. You think I stole a watch? The employee pointed toward the display aggressively. A Daytona model is missing. The entire showroom became silent. The guard's expression hardened immediately. Empty your pockets. Adrian stared at him for several seconds, then quietly asked, Would you ask every customer here to do the same? Nobody answered. Because everyone understood exactly why Adrian was being singled out. The employee scoffed loudly. Don't turn this into some race issue. Adrian almost laughed hearing that sentence. Because somehow racism always became invisible once people were forced to admit it out loud. The guard stepped closer now. Sir, if you cooperate, this stays simple. Adrian slowly raised both hands away from his body. Go ahead. The guard searched his pockets carefully. Wallet, phone, keys, nothing else. The employee frowned immediately. Checked his jacket. The security guard searched again. Still nothing. But the missing watch was nowhere to be found. The customers started whispering louder now. One woman looked uncomfortable. Maybe they made a mistake. But the employee refused to back down. He had to stash it somewhere. Adrian finally looked directly at him. And for the first time since entering the store, anger flashed briefly across his face. You already decided I'm guilty. The employee folded his arms stubbornly. You fit the profile. The second those words left his mouth, the entire boutique went dead silent. Even the security guard looked shocked. Because some thoughts sound uglier once spoken aloud. Adrian stared at the employee carefully now. Fit the profile. The man immediately realized his mistake. That's not what I meant. But honestly, everyone knew exactly what he meant. A wealthy white customer suddenly spoke quietly. Jesus Christ. The tension inside the showroom thickened instantly. Adrian took a slow breath, trying to stay composed. Because he understood something dangerous about moments like this. The second black men show anger. People stop hearing words and start seeing threats. So he stayed calm. Even though humiliation crawled through every inch of his body, the employee pointed toward the exit. Either way, you need to leave. Adrian nodded slowly, then quietly asked one question. Do you know who I am? The employee rolled his eyes immediately. Here comes the celebrity speech. Several customers laughed awkwardly. Adrian looked down briefly, then back up. No, he said softly. Not celebrity. The front showroom doors suddenly opened before anyone could respond, and instantly, everything changed. 3 men in expensive suits walked inside, followed by 2 women carrying legal folders and 1 older Asian man wearing glasses. The entire staff immediately straightened up, because powerful people recognized power instantly. One employee whispered nervously, That's the board. The Rolex worker who accused Adrian suddenly looked confused. The older Asian man scanned the showroom quickly. Then his eyes landed on Adrian, and his expression changed immediately. Oh no. He walked directly toward Adrian without hesitation, then bowed his head slightly. Mr. Cole, he said carefully, I sincerely apologize for the delay. The acquisition meeting ended later than expected. Complete silence. The employee blinked rapidly. Acquisition. The older man turned calmly toward the stunned showroom staff.
Yes.
Then he pointed toward Adrian. This is Adrian Cole. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The older man adjusted his glasses carefully. The new majority owner of West Coast Luxury Holdings. Several customers gasped loudly. Because West Coast Luxury Holdings didn't own one Rolex store, it owned all of them. Every luxury watch boutique across California, Nevada, and Arizona. The employee's face instantly lost all color. The security guard stepped backward slowly, and Adrian quietly looked around the showroom at every person who watched him like a criminal minutes earlier. Then he asked softly, "Now do I fit the profile?" The silence inside the Rolex boutique became unbearable. Nobody knew where to look anymore. The same customers who were recording Adrian moments earlier now slowly lowered their phones with embarrassed expressions. One woman quietly turned her camera off completely while another man slipped toward the back of the showroom, pretending to study watches he clearly could no longer focus on. The employee who accused Adrian looked physically sick now. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out, because suddenly every sentence he said earlier sounded horrifying in his own head. "You fit the profile." The older Asian businessman beside Adrian adjusted his tie carefully. "Mr. Cole," he said respectfully, "the board members are waiting upstairs whenever you're ready." Adrian nodded once, but he did not move yet. Instead, he slowly turned toward the employee again. "What's your name?" The man swallowed hard. "Brian." Adrian looked at him calmly, not aggressively, not emotionally. That somehow made Brian even more uncomfortable. "Brian," Adrian said quietly, "how long have you worked here?" 4 years. Adrian nodded slowly. "And how many black customers have you searched during those 4 years?" The employee's face tightened immediately. I don't know." Adrian tilted his head slightly. "No," he answered softly. "You do know." The room stayed silent. Enough that it felt normal. Brian looked down instantly, because deep inside, he knew Adrian was right. Adrian slowly walked toward the center of the showroom while expensive watches glittered beneath glass displays around him. The polished marble floor reflected the bright showroom lights while every eye followed him carefully. "Now, you know the crazy part," Adrian continued calmly. "I actually came here planning to buy 3 watches today." Several employees looked stunned hearing that. "One for myself," Adrian said. "One for my business partner." Then his voice softened slightly. "And one for my father." Something changed emotionally in his expression now. Not anger. Pain. Real pain. The older businessman beside him quietly lowered his eyes because he already knew that story. Adrian looked toward the Rolex display again. "My father loved what he is." The boutique remained completely silent. "He used to repair old clocks inside our apartment when I was a kid." A faint smile touched Adrian's face briefly. He said watches were honest. Several customers listened carefully now, because no matter who wears them, Adrian continued quietly, "time treats everybody the same." Then his smile disappeared. "But people don't." The tension returned instantly. Brian looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him alive. Adrian placed both hands calmly into his pockets now. "When I was 11 years old," he continued softly, "my father took me into a luxury watch store for the first time." Several employees exchanged nervous looks immediately. "He spent 6 months saving money for a used Omega watch after getting promoted at work." Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. But before we even reached the display case, security stopped him. The showroom became quieter somehow. They accused him of using fake money. One older white customer covered her mouth slowly. Adrian stared at the watches behind the glass. I still remember my father standing there emptying his pockets while people stared at him. His voice stayed calm, but emotion cracked underneath every word now. He kept smiling politely even while being humiliated. Nobody moved. Then afterward, outside the store, Adrian paused briefly. I asked him why he didn't yell. The room waited silently. Adrian finally answered his own question. "He told me black men don't always get the luxury of looking angry." That sentence hit the boutique like a punch. Several employees lowered their heads completely now, because deep down they understood exactly what he meant. Adrian looked toward Brian again. "My father died 3 years ago." The employee's eyes widened slightly. "He never got the watch." A painful silence settled over the showroom, and today, Adrian whispered, "I walked into this store planning to buy the exact model he wanted." Brian's eyes immediately moved toward the empty Rolex display case. The Daytona, the same watch they accused Adrian of stealing. Adrian nodded slowly after noticing the realization on Brian's face. "Funny, right?" Nobody answered. "I spent my entire childhood watching my father treated like a criminal for wanting nice things." His eyes slowly scanned the boutique. And today, the exact same thing happened to me. The older businessman beside Adrian finally spoke carefully. The acquisition includes immediate authority over all regional operations. That sentence made several employees visibly nervous again. One woman near the register started crying quietly. Brian stepped forward shakily. "Mr. Cole, I swear I'm not racist." Adrian looked at him silently for several long seconds, then asked softly, "What does racist look like to you?" Brian froze. Adrian continued, "Because people imagine racism as burning crosses and screaming slurs." Nobody moved, but most racism looks exactly like this. His hand gestured calmly across the boutique. Assumptions, silence, suspicion, another painful silence, fear attached to skin color before personality even enters the room. Brian's breathing became uneven now. Adrian stepped slightly closer. "You didn't hate me personally?" Brian nodded quickly like he finally found hope. "Yes, exactly. That's worse," Adrian interrupted softly. The employee stopped speaking immediately. "Because you treated me like a threat automatically." The room became silent again. "You saw a black man touching an expensive watch and your brain connected him to theft before evidence." Brian looked shattered now. Adrian's voice remained heartbreakingly calm. "And the scary part," he whispered, "you probably still think you're a good person." That sentence broke something emotionally inside the boutique. Because nobody there could honestly deny it anymore. Not after hearing everything. Not after watching how quickly suspicion formed. The security guard who searched Adria suddenly removed his name badge slowly. "I owe you an apology too," he admitted quietly. Adrian looked toward him. The guard swallowed hard. "I should have questioned the accusation before treating you like a criminal." Adrian nodded slightly. "That matters." Then he surprised everyone. "But you know who deserves the biggest apology?" The guard frowned slightly. "My father." The emotion in Adrian's voice deepened now. Because men like him spend entire lives being treated suspiciously in rooms they helped build with their labor. Several customers wiped tears quietly from their eyes now. Adrian looked around the luxurious showroom again. "All these stores," he said softly. "All this wealth." His eyes slowly moved across the expensive displays. "Most of it exists because ordinary people worked themselves to exhaustion." Nobody spoke. "My father fixed elevators 12 hours a day." His voice cracked slightly. He missed birthdays, school plays, holidays. The older businessman beside him lowered his eyes emotionally. "And despite all that hard work," Adrian whispered, "people still looked at him like he didn't belong near luxury." A heavy silence filled the air. Then suddenly a young black employee near the back spoke quietly. "My dad went through that too." Everyone turned toward him. The young worker looked nervous now after speaking out loud. He used to wear his security uniform home because stores treated him better when they saw a badge. Adrian stared at him carefully, then nodded once, because he understood completely. The young employee smiled sadly. "Thank you for saying it out loud." That sentence changed something inside the room, because suddenly people were no longer pretending this incident was isolated. It was familiar, painfully familiar. Adrian slowly walked back toward the Rolex display case one final time. Then he pointed calmly toward the Daytona model. "I'll take it." Brian looked confused for a second. "The watch?" Adrian nodded. "Yes." The employee hurried nervously toward the display. His hands shook badly while unlocking the case. Adrian watched quietly, then softly added, "But not because I need it." The room stayed silent. "I'm buying it because my father deserved to wear one before he died." Brian carefully placed the Rolex box onto the counter. His eyes were red now. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. Adrian looked at him calmly, then finally answered the question Brian never asked directly. "I know." Brian blinked in confusion. Adrian nodded slowly. "I know you're sorry now." That sentence hit harder than anger ever could, because everybody inside the boutique understood the painful truth hiding underneath it. Sorry only arrived after discovering Adrian was rich, powerful, important. Nobody apologized when they thought he was ordinary. And honestly, that was the real tragedy.